All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to another episode of your daily seed of leadership right here on your Leader Seeds podcast. It's me, Paul Kalamosman, and I'm glad that you joining us on today's show. And the reason is because we are wrapping up. This is the final episode of 2022. So I'm not too sure when you're listening to this, but hey, just know that right now, the place that we're in right now as we're recording this is the last day of 2022. And boy, what a year has it been, right? Let's take, I almost feel like let's take a moment of silence to reflect on 2022. But in all seriousness, right? Have you taken a moment of silence to really just kind of quiet things down and really think of this year? It's times like this. It's like the past several years, right? It's times like this that things are moving so quickly and there's so much going on, and every day there's so much change, and your emotions are all over the place. There's tough times. I know some people that went through the hardest times in their life in the last 2 years. I know me and my family had a few really tough situations. And then there's times when it's almost like you're at the pinnacle, right? You're just at this like, what? I can't believe we're doing this. I can't believe this actually happened, right? You're at the top and you're loving that. So that extreme up and down, that extreme roller coaster ride and the uncertainty in it can really contribute to just kind of holding on, right? Like just like many of us have just been holding on the past few years, right? And if you're so busy holding on, you miss so much that's going on. So that's why it's a good time to really just take a moment to just have some silence in your day, create a space that you can kind of like intentionally think. There's studies that show that I think it's like 80% of our thoughts are just regurgitated from yesterday's thoughts, right? There's a majority of the thoughts that you think every day, if we're not intentional with them, if we're not looking at a planner, if we're not looking at a vision and we're moving forward, if we're not looking forward, guess what they are? Your thoughts are just the same thoughts that you had yesterday. And though it might be a new year on a calendar, if we're not intentional with our thinking, guess what? We're thinking about the same things. If we didn't do that in 2022, guess what? Your thoughts in 2023 might be thoughts from 2010. Woo. You see the importance of being intentional by taking this time to really clear that space in our mind and then to actually intentionally think about new things. When you're thinking forward, it's not as easy as it sounds. When we're thinking forward, you really have to be intentional. By default, no one thinks forward automatically. It's not a default mechanism in our mind. Because if you think about it, even if we imagine we're pulling things from the past, right? Even your creativity is somewhat limited because you're still structured in what you know from what you've experienced. That's what happens if we just let it go and I'm just going to think whatever I want to think. You're only going to think what you've really experienced, and your questions, you're only going to ask questions on what limits that you're aware of. There's some questions we're not even asking if we're not intentional with ourselves, if we're not intentional about moving forward. So looking at 2022, what I want to share with you today on the podcast, one thing that I really do, and I think it's so important, and I'll also share it with you at the end before we wrap up. One thing that if you forget everything else that I say, we're almost hitting a 100 episode. If you forget 99 episodes from this Leader Seeds podcast with the great conversations we had and some really, insider masterclass episodes that we had to share things with. If you forget it all, what I'll share with you at the end of today's podcast is the one thing I hope you hold on to. Is the one thing that I'm like, just don't forget this. If you forget it all, you can always come back. That's why it's recorded. And hey, thank God for technology, right? You can always come back and read it again, or you can always come back, watch it again on YouTube. But this one thing, my friend, I hope that you really just say, you know what, if there's any priority that I'm setting, I'd say put this right at that number one spot. I'll share with you that when we wrap up today. So as I was reflecting on, I don't know if you, if for those of you that follow me on social media or on the socials, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Facebook, I got a TikTok now. If you're on TikTok, but hey, if you're following there, you've seen a recent post that I had sharing the thing is 12 years of journals, and I'm looking at them right now. If you're listening to this on audio, and they're different. They're composition books. Some of them are notebooks that I got as gifts, and I just made it a journal. And some I intentionally bought. And then the last few, which is pretty cool, I actually made. We actually learned how to make them on Amazon, and we had them published. So we have journals for you if you want to take a look at them. I'd say definitely take a look at them. Some are just notes, like they're just what they call low content, so it's just to take notes. But the most recent one we just published is called Dream Plan Do, and this one is much more intentional. You know what? I'll talk about that after, but first, I want to let you know what the post was about. So I posted 12 years of journaling. And here is one thing. I didn't journal in the beginning. So I don't know if you journal or you don't. And if you don't journal, I want to tell you this. I didn't journal in the beginning because I really didn't. I thought there was one way to journal and I didn't fit that in my life. So I'm like, that's not for me. There's many different ways to journal. There's one line a day journaling. There's audio journaling. There's so many different ways. There's on the spot coaching journaling. That's how I started. The one for 2012, right there, this little guy. It actually fits in my pocket, and I would carry me throughout the day. This little guy right here, you see, looking at. You see how the it's all stretched out. That's wear and tear. I carried this on, with me throughout the day, and as things would happen, I just would boom capture it. But here's a benefit in it that you can look forward to, and has really helped me in my leadership and in communication. Mm. Journaling will help you capture and communicate your thoughts and emotions. I never thought that. I thought I was like having to be this perfect writer. I thought I had to be this perfect writer with exceptional grammar to journal. And no. I just say just write. Have you heard the concept of free writing? Just write. You want to get in the practice in your leadership of capturing and communicating your thoughts and emotions. Because if you're not doing that, for one, if you're not capturing it, how do you know who you really are? How can you be an authentic leader? It's really difficult, right? It's really difficult to be an authentic leader if you can't even capture your own thoughts. So how do you capture your thoughts? And the next point is, how do you communicate them? How do you communicate those thoughts? You can have a great thought. I got a great idea, but I can't communicate it. So how do you learn to capture and communicate your thoughts and emotions? Journaling will help you with that, with that skill set, so you can grow as a leader. Now, the self leadership, right? But being disciplined, we're actually saying I can capture and I can actually go ahead and I can communicate this. And you can actually, even now that I think about it, there's a lot of thoughts I capture that when I write down in my journal, I'm like, I can't believe I think like this. This doesn't match my value system. I've grown to a point that I no longer want to think like this. So it helps me be intentional with getting new thoughts, right? Saying, you know what, I don't believe that anymore. I used to believe that in another season, but no, not anymore. And it helps me because if not, that thought is going to continually close my perspective, and it'll do the same for you. So when you start to journal, you'll learn that, hey, you know what? I don't think like this no more. I used to before, and it helped me in this season, but this isn't me. But I'm thinking it because I'm writing it down. Then you can be intentional by actually writing new thoughts and thinking forward, right? So you want to make sure you do that. Now, there's a story I put in here. I'm going to give you just the quick runabout. I'm not going to. I shared it. I just did a live. If you want to check it out, go watch the live on my Instagram. But I'm not going to tell you the same thing. I'm not going to read it for you like I did on the live. I'm just going to tell you what it was about. Basically, I talked about in 2012. It was in November 2012. I was working with a with a with a casino company, and at that time we just moved to Las Vegas and we got a new place. So I was writing down. I was excited. We got a new place. I took my two oldest children to school that day, and it was a good day. I like to be part of that morning with them. That's something special. And we just found out that my wife was pregnant with her third child. So I was excited. So found out that she was pregnant with her third child on the way. New place, we're loving it. I'm being part of my kids' mornings. I'm loving it. And then my wife decides to put in her 2 weeks because she's pregnant. She's going to stay home with the children. And then that day, later in the day, I remember I find out that I'm being let go from my job. I was in the process of looking for a second part-time job, and I found out that I'm being let go, just because at the place that the business was in, they were letting go the newest people, and I was that guy. I was one of the newer managers on the team, and they were letting me go. It wasn't because of my performance, because actually my director and my managers was upset. They were working really hard to help me look for a transfer somewhere else, but it is what it is, and they needed to let me go. So I got the bad news, but there was something in me that said, "Don't worry, things will be okay." I sat in the car, listened to to a song, and I lost it. I had a good old cry. I had a good cry. I had a really good cry. I was mad. I was frustrated. I was hurt. Um, and I was confused. To be honest, I was confused. So I was just wondering, like, why? What's going on? What do I do? How do I tell my wife this? Right? And once again, I heard this thing that just said, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." Drove home, told my wife, and my wife said the exact same thing. She said, "Don't worry, God loves us. Everything will be okay." Man, I got an amazing wife. Long story short, at the end, what do you do? What do you do when you get that kind of blindsided news? What seemed like it was a good day, things are working out, and then one thing just like really shattered it. So what did we do? Well, we didn't cook dinner that night. We actually took the kids to a mini Grand Prix. It's a park that you drive these go-karts around, and there's some games, and it's a lot of fun. And the reason I want to share that with you is because it's in those moments of confusion and overwhelm that you want to be that you want to be frustrated, but that's when you want to celebrate. When you're confused and you're overwhelmed and you're frustrated, you want to be intentional and just celebrate it, because that's where you start to grow. You're confused because you're hitting a rock. You're frustrated because you feel stuck, right? But you feel stuck because you hit the ceiling. You hit what you thought was a limit. But my friend, that's not the limit. It's time to break through that limit. You celebrate and you break through that limit. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to see things differently. When most people will be frustrated, throw a fit, go home, and just maybe it's like, hey, if don't be fake. I cried in the car. I was real with my emotions. You want to be real with it, but at the same, don't fall subject to what happened before. Remember that one thing inside me that said, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." This is the one thing I want to share with you that I hope that you do. If you forget 99 episodes from the Leader Sees podcast, this is the one thing, my friend, that I hope is a priority for me and is a priority for a high impact and a healthy leader. If you want to be a high impact and a healthy leader, a leader that makes impact greater than themselves, but at the same time doesn't sacrifice themselves at the altar, so that way everyone else, all their loved ones, have to deal with the broken, the messy, the unhealed part of you. You see, if we don't work on our healing, we continue to be sick for those that are closest to us, your loved ones. So the old model of leadership about just grinding out to you're down, and that glory kind of day where you're kind of all worn out, and this might paint the perfect picture. A friend of mine was having a good conversation, and he said, a lot of times in my younger years, I wanted to be Superman. I wanted to be Superman, going out there and just, as the husband and the father, I wanted to be Superman at my job and my business. And I go out there and you put out fires and you save a bunch of things and you're kind of just hero, right? But who was the one person that Superman hurt? Lois Lane. She always was left looking for him. She always was left by herself. She always was left hurt. Her plans was always canceled. So don't let the movie version of Superman fool you into the real life version of sometimes we try to be that. But what happens is the most important people suffer because we're out there trying to save the world. My friend, we don't have to save the world. We don't have to help every single person. We don't have to please every single person just to make it on a magazine or feel this sense of glory. Know your worth today. Know your worth today. This is the one thing that I do that when I work with people This is the one thing that we do before we plan. And if you know me, you know I'm a planner. You know I love to put things together in a system, and we have a system that we've developed. Like I said, we created books. I even have some technology that helps us to keep us accountable. But all of that is just noise if we don't take time to pray. And I don't mean just a quick prayer. I don't mean an automatic one that you just kind of traditionally recite. No, I mean an honest conversation. Sit down, surrender, and seek his vision. Seek God's vision for real. Like, you gotta sit, you gotta do it. I mean, come on. If you're seeking something bigger than you can't do it on yesterday's news. You can't do it on your own past experiences. If you're seeking to make an impact bigger than yourself as a leader, you got to take time to seek God's vision for your life, to sit down and pray and to say, God, what do you have in store for me this year? Now, you don't pray for answers because sometimes I don't get them in a moment, but you pray for that time to have a conversation, that time to open up space, because He will answer them. Might not be today, but you will. And that's why if you're journaling, if you're capturing your thoughts and your emotions, sometimes that's when the answer comes. Sometimes it hits me right in that moment. Sometimes it's in the middle of running errands, and I get a thought, or somebody says something, and I write it down, and I'm like, that's it. That's it. So look, make sure that you're taking time, dedicated, honest, real time, and just really just marinating it in prayer before you actually go ahead and move forward. At some points, I'll tell you this is how important it is. Even at some points, the whole month of January, I didn't have my goals. I didn't know them. I'm honest with you. I didn't know them. But I kept praying every day, several times in a day, all through January, just to say, God, what do you want in this area of my life? What do you have for me in this area of my life? I want to be in line with God no matter what, because this is the thing at the end of the day. Like I said, if you are after a God-sized dream, going at it by yourself, yeah, that's crazy. Right? So take that time, my friend, today. Make sure that you take time to put some good, heartfelt, just wholesome prayer behind the plans that you have for 2023. And we got some big things as we spent that time to do it. He really showed us some exciting things coming up in 2023. So stay connected. If you haven't yet, subscribe, you can message me on social media, and we'll continue to grow better so we can continue to serve better as leaders. With that being said, that's it for today. This is a wrap of 2022 on Leader Seeds. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for going there. And thank you for committing in your growth. That's the biggest part of it all. Continue to commit in your leadership growth, my friend. That's it for now. This is Paul Keller signing off for 2022. I guess I'll see you next year.